On today's video, we're going to discuss tuning a car, specifically a modified, with spring load. More on this when we come back. Hey, on today's video, we're going to talk about tuning on the race car a little bit with preload or load in the springs. Okay, but before we get started, please like, subscribe, comment to our videos. Help us to grow this channel. The more you guys do that stuff, the more YouTube pushes our videos out there to you. Okay, so I appreciate everything you guys done. We got to 3,000 subscribers, which is a milestone for us. I know it's a small number in comparison, but it's a milestone. Tuning a car with spring load. Okay, it's not, in my opinion, quite as magical as we have alluded to, but it does make a difference, and it's a little bit different number. So understand this. What we're doing is we've taken a load number and we've traded it out for a tape measure. Okay, so our load stick has become our tape measure. It's now the device we're using to measure height. And it becomes more accurate because it generates a number in poundage versus a 16th. It has a digital readout. It's easier to read than a tape measure. There's no variance to which side of the line I'm on, and there's no real mistakes in if it was 7/16 or 9/16. Okay, so we don't make the mistakes with the load stick, but the pound number is maybe not as important as the height of the car. And that pound number is representing a height, okay? So we'll start out on the right front because the right front seems to be the happy spot for most people. So let's say this is a modified, we're on a 550 spring, and we're going to say we're at 650 pounds of load at ride height. And then we have our 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch numbers. Okay. Well, the only thing that's important is do we have enough spring in the car, or is the spring in the car good enough to keep the car off the racetrack? And if the answer to that is yes, whether it's a 500, 550, 450, we have to keep the car off the racetrack. If your car is hitting the racetrack and you think it's doing something positive for your car, you better be winning a lot of races to continue down that path. If you're not winning every race you're in and your car is hitting the racetrack, get your car up off the track, because at the point it's hitting in the corner is where we need to be. It needs to be working the best, the most. Okay, I don't care how down on the nose or sealed up you are going down the straightaway. Okay, I don't care. If you are bottoming out the car in the corner, you're killing speed. Okay, so you have to get the car up. So if your down number, your 3 inch number is 1250 and you're hitting the racetrack, it needs to be higher. And I would probably, depending on the spring rate, be increasing it by 50 pounds. When you put your car in posture attitude in the shop, and you need to have about 2 inches of clearance. Get a 2x4 and slide under the car. You need about 2 inches of clearance under that car. You're going to bottom it out on the racetrack. And when you do, like I said, it's just no good. Right front. If I'm tight on entry, on throttle, car won't turn in. You know, there's many things that can fix it, but we're only talking about load in this video. We're not talking about proper braking, proper corner entry. We're not talking about none of that. We're not talking about left rear chain and hike in the car. Right now, we're talking about the right front. So we would, tight on entry, we would lower the right front or decrease the load number. The 650 number or the 1250 number has to go down. If it goes down and we hit the racetrack, big problem. So our whole theory of load number change to tune a race car is gone. So then we have to go back up and add lead to the car. So we have to add weight to the car to make the car turn. Okay. And then we lower that new weight we have down. So when we scale a car, which no one scales a car anymore, mistake. But when we scale a car and that car says 430 on the right front, this is an indication that there's going to be some issues. 450, there's going to be some issues. 475, we're getting better. And nobody's at 500 anymore. If you want to have a right front scale number of 500, you need to go out and get you a 10-year-old car. The 500 is going to turn better than the 430. So it's the amount of weight on that. It's the overall amount of weight available to help the car turn. So as we go down in posture, that spring rate that we're generating, that 1250 number that we talk about, I don't believe is enough number to turn the car anyway, because the time you get to the tire, so we're losing another 5 inches from the shock mount load stick to the tire. So that load stick thing and that spring smasher that says wheel load, that's lie number one. That's not wheel load. That's a load number that's somewhere between the tire and the lower control arm bolts. That's what that is. It's not a wheel number. Okay, it's never been a wheel number. You want to put a wheel number to it, you need to put it on a pull down rig. That's a load number, which is not even a load number, it's a height number. And 1250 represents the height, but we need to know where that height starts from. This is why stuff like ride height and scaling is still important, because when you say I'm 1250 on a 550 or a 500, that's information that needs to be known. 550, I'm starting at 7 7/8, I'm 3 inches down. So these are numbers you need to know when you're asking for help. Because just going out and going, I'm 1250 at 3 inches, doesn't mean, so am I. And my car handles well, and yours don't. So why is the difference? And everybody's like, well, it's your shock package, it's your driver. No, because there's a variance there that's causing a problem. Okay, that's the right front. So right front to me, and it hasn't been recently it's changed. Right front to me is about height. Okay, I don't feel like the 1250 is enough load number by the time you get to the tire to make the car turn. But I feel like the height of the car and the thrust angle that's created from the left rear to the right front allows the car to turn. And I think I'll do a whole video. I got to do some graphics. I think I'll do a whole video on thrust angle, because nobody uses thrust angle. Okay, so thrust angle is what's rotating the car. That's what's making the car turn. Okay, if thrust angle decreases, the car will get tight. So left front. I view the left front as left front to right rear, left rear to right front. Okay, people ask me, do you like a chain on the left front? Yes, I do. I think it's one of the best crutches you can put on a race car. To me, if you put a chain on and you set the chain, and I would set the chain at 1.5 free at ride height for the slick, and 2, 2 1/4, 2.5 in the tacky. Okay. If the chain makes your car better, this is telling you that the load transfer from the left front to the right rear is lacking, and you need to fix it. Because we may never race without a chain, but if you get somewhere where you have to race without a chain, can't race without a chain, then you got to fix the right rear load. Okay, currently we're just left front. If you wanted cars loose on exit, wants to tail out, okay, typically I don't fix this in the left front. Typically I fix this in the right rear. But if the right rear is sitting on a good number and the ride height is correct, and the spring is, in newer shape or new, and the slider, the maintenance program's done, everything's like it's supposed to be, then I may go over and put turns in the left front to increase that load to the right rear, just like the chain's doing, okay? And it would probably affect it more on entry than it is on exit, but it's going to affect it through the corner. Yeah, and here again, it'd probably be, if you want to put a little feel in the right rear, put a couple turns in the left front. That's on entry, especially if you're off gas entry, that would probably show up more. Um, Generally, if you're going to make an adjustment to the left front, you're probably going to increase. This is one time when that term is okay because you are raising the ride height, increasing the load, and sending more to the right rear. Right rear load. Now, right rear I see as a load, okay, as a load number. And you're going to get different numbers by doing this two different ways. So we generally do a tape measure number and do the math on it, which is going to come out a little lower than if you put a load stick on it. So there's a difference between a load stick. Well, on the right rear, you're going to take the coilover off and have the shock on, or you're going to take you're going to take the slider off and have the shock on, or you're going to take I said that wrong again. I'm so sorry. You're going to take the shock off, put the load stick on, and you're going to check the spring rate of the car. And you're going to do it by putting a setup stick in the left rear so the left rear don't move. This will generate a higher number than doing the math. Okay, we typically do the math. We're typically 375 pounds to 400 pounds of load on a modified on the right rear. That's where we're shooting for a number. If our car is loose on exit, loose to the center, we look at to make sure that load has to be correct at ride height with the driver in the car, or when we establish that number first. So this has been a debate here lately. When we established that number first, we were not with a driver because the driver was at a racetrack making these adjustments to the car. Okay. So if you want the driver in the car, put his butt in the car and test it. Ride height with the driver. That's how we're going to scale the car. Okay. If we're splitting hairs over here when we're setting the preload, put the driver in the car, set the preload 375, 400 pounds, right rear at ride height, has to be at ride height. If it's not at ride height, if you take the spring off and you put it in a smasher and you smash it, has to be at ride height. And when you put it back on the car, it has to be at ride height. If it's not at ride height, the answer is wrong. Okay. If you go over there during the race and put two turns in thinking you're putting load in the right rear, you are not. You're killing it. You're taking load out of it. You're raising the ride height. Okay, you're going to make the car freer on exit, not better. So it'd probably be better to take load out than you would be to put load in. Okay, if you want to make the right rear better and the slick center off, then you must put 2 in, 2 out, 1 in, 1 out. You must do the 4 corners. If you don't feel comfortable doing it as a track, and a lot of times that's not the adjustment we make at the track. We put lead on the car to add load to the right rear, okay, in the slick. It really needs lead. It needs the center of gravity to change. You can do that with the Panhard bar, the J bar. But it needs the center of gravity to change to move the car the same amount as it did when it was tacky. So if we go out there and we're getting 2 inches of travel on the right rear in the tacky, and we're getting 1 3/4 inches or 1.5 inches in the slick, then we need to get back to our 2-inch number. This keeps the tire load in the car. If the weight rolls the car over, the lateral forces have decreased. We may need to add rebound to the right rear to slow that car back from rolling back over, slow that down because our lateral forces may not be as great. We may not be able to throttle through the corner as hard as we could when it was tacky. Okay, things you have to take in consideration. Again, we're talking about load on the right rear. When you need to increase load on the right rear, add lead. You have to add lead outside of the spring box, most generally, and you have to add it right above the right rear frame rail, most generally. So is it in the best spot? No, but it's most generally in the only spot. If you need to add 50 pounds and you can't put 50 pounds, you may already be carrying lead on the right rear, then make a container that will fit the shape of the car. You know, like the car we're currently working on has a triangular piece in there, the frame rail and a triangular piece. And there's a front bar goes across there for the front shock, and it creates this triangular piece. And you could create a pan for that piece, and you could melt lead and put it in there. And it could come in and out of the car very easily, and it could solve a lot of problems. Okay. Check your rules. IMCA says it needs 2 bolts in it. Put 2 bolts in it. Do it right, because we don't want it coming out of the car. Left rear, most of us are on some kind of an extended load. So we'll talk about extended load versus bite, or bite, not versus. Extended load or bite. If your car, when you add bite to your car, bite is the number at ride height. And it's saying that I'm 100 pounds heavier on the left rear than I am on the right rear. So I'm 700 pounds over here, 600 pounds over here. Okay, I'm 630 over here, I'm 730 over there. With the driver, I'm 680 over here, I'm 780 over here. 100 pounds bite. Okay, bite affects the car as the car is on the bar and it's starting to come back down. Bite used to be a bigger tool when we auto turned the rear of the car, but we're not wanting to do that. So if your car's rear steering as you let off the gas, auto turn it. If it's coming around, getting into the corner, talked to a guy today, and that's what he said. He said, my last year car just used to turn itself in. Well, that's because the rear of the car turned. Now the rear of the car wants to go forward, and the front is not turning it. So you're holding this thing for a reason. Steering wheel, turn the car. Okay, with the front tires, let the rear tires push the car forward. Okay, bite. If you increase bite, it'll auto steer the car, auto turn the car. It'll also give you more drive. Typically we did that. We added bite in the slick. If you're going to do it, you probably can't let the car down as much. It depends on where you're at. So if you're in that 40 to 60 pound range, it's different than if you're in the 80 to 100 pound range, especially on modified. Tires come into play. All that comes into play, bar angles and all that. We're talking about the load. So extended load. So now let's say we're on a 125 and we're spinning the car a little bit coming off the corner. We're later in the corner exit, and we're getting out there. We're just maybe right past the bumps or going through the bumps, and poof, we lose the left rear. And we're not really stepping out. We're just kind of spinning. We have to throttle back a little bit, get the car back under us and go forward. Okay, if that's the case, add more extended load to it. Our guys understand that our extended load range is from about 180 to 250. On a 125, this is the range we're in. If you're on an 80-pound spring, and you're in a car, let's say you're on an 80-pound, that's another popular spring. Let's say you're on an 80-pound spring and you're on a really tight race car, well, your load number may need to go down. Okay, this is where you need to understand what's going on with your car. Because if you're on an 100-pound load on an 80-pound spring because the guy winning races at your local track is doing that, you need to understand why he's doing that. Okay, so it's because when you do it on your car, you're not going to get the same results. Okay, and typically and I see this a lot. I see it a lot, and I kind of struggle a little bit, because I don't know if the guy's doing it because, Jason Hughes is doing it. Okay, Jason might be doing it for a whole different reason, and I often say, Scott, Scott's going to do things, or Davenport's going to do things because they're Jonathan Davenport. Okay, we're going to do things because we need help with the car. Okay, so it's a lot different. 80-pound spring, I would still be in the same load rate. but it would probably have to run in the higher range. So if you get up in range, if you're running 250 load to 300 load all the time, then you might want to come back and add a little rear percent to the car and decrease the load back down because the car may be a little light in the back. Okay, the rear load, the left rear extended load, and byte number is all dictating how well the car goes forward and how well the car turns. Before we go down that path, let's which is better, preload, extended load, or byte? Okay, now I think this also comes down to a preference of what you might like better, one versus the other. I personally think extended load is better for the car because it doesn't make the cars tight, getting it back up on the bars. Okay, it also is supposed to help kind of hold the car up on entry. So the car may not fall as much in our off throttle or braking zone as it would with standard spring setup. So in my opinion, I think the preload deal, I do like the preload deal better. I also think the preload deal is a lot simpler because we're attached to the spring and we're adding load number to the car. So once you get it figured out how to set the preload, which is against the chain. So if you can't really run a chain, you need to extend against something. If you can't extend against something, it may not be the best setup. But where you can extend here in a modified, extend against the chain, set the preload, jack the car up to the chain, put the preload in, measure it, 125, your inch 650. Call it 5/8, inch and 5/8. That's your measurement. Okay, make sure it's right. If you're running shock and spring, well, we're going to say shock in front, spring behind on a slider. Okay, just makes it simpler. 200 pounds of extended load. That would make a car good. So this is a little bit about loading tires with, on a modified with your springs, trying to get the car balanced out and have the best car possible. I'm not going to lie to you. There's different ways to do this. This is one way. There's different theories to do this. In the end, I feel like the results are really pretty close to the same. Some guys will swear down, you've got to be on a 450 right front spring. Okay, well, nobody ever really explains why you have to be on that 450, why you can't be on a 500. I see a lot of guys that want to go to their grave on a 450. And I struggle to understand that because they're plowing the racetrack, but they're not ready to give it up. And they'll swear by it. Okay. Well, I kind of swear by it. Let's do what works and let's do what's fastest. Okay. For us. May not be fastest for the fast guy, but our goal is to be faster than we were last week, be better than we were last week. That's our whole program is based off of, is being better than we were and continue to grow. That's the whole life cycle. So there are always going to be people faster and there's always going to be people better. And when we become that person that's fastest, then we need to know how to stay there. We need to know why we're there. This will help us to know how to stay there. So tuning the car with springs. This was a question asked by one of our subscribers. He said, I want to see this. I hope this helps. I hope we did a good job. As always, remember, go fast, go left, and God bless you.